Hey y'all, Casey and Brandon here again to talk about.
Oh, hey, good to see you there.
Oh, hi, hello. To talk about some of the stuff we've been reading, some of the comics we've been reading, and all that. But first, did you want to talk about the thing you just grabbed?
This little thing?
Oh, this little thing?
Casey Jones got me a present that I'm very excited by. It's the big old Milo Manara butterscotch print.
Yay! Mm-hmm.
Should have grabbed it from the other room, but either way, this is a more recent redrawing of Manara doing the cover of what is at least the Catlin Communications English translation of butterscotch.
Yeah.
Anyway, very cool.
Yeah. And then my recent thing that I got from our awesome roommate, Emma, is this adorable little fox that I call Foxy Shazam, like the band. And yeah, she's like super talented.
What's she do for a living?
She makes the best little knitted guys for a living. That's what
I meant Foxy Shazam.
Oh, Foxy Shazam. What does she do for a living? She comforts me and helps stave off depression. Yay, Foxy Shazam!
It's good work if you can get it.
It is. Good job. Okay. So, getting to the meat of the thing. First up, Army of Love from Vertigo, number 1. By writing was done by Rick Veitch.
I think it's all Rick Veitch.
Rick Veitch? Oh, art too? I think Jerry Erskine maybe did inks.
Maybe it is, yeah.
Was that right? Did inks?
Yes, yeah, inks. Yeah, we kind of don't think about inking in many modern comics.
That's true.
And I guess this is...
Pardon me.
I'm trying to find the year that this thing was put out.
So they're in Afghanistan in it?
Mm-hmm.
Or they it's like technically not Afghanistan, but it's like Afghanistan or something, like very clearly supposed to be Afghanistan.
2007.
There you go. That makes sense. That's like towards the end of Vertigo, because Vertigo, I believe, no longer exists.
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. There you go.
Yeah, so it's just Baghdad
Afghanistan.
and Afghanistan.
Oh, so good. That because the U.S.
was
currently invading both of those things at the time. And so, Brandon Graham, what's the plot?
I guess one thing that's interesting is like Rick Veitch is a cartoonist who's been around for a really long time.
Creator of Swamp Thing.
Yeah, Swamp Thing. The One is where I knew his stuff from.
I don't know that. What's that?
I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like a weird superhero comic. It had really good parody covers.
You've pointed this out to me when we've been bin diving, I think.
Yeah, so there's like an Uncle Sam cover, and then there's one that looks like a McDonald's or Burger King ad or something. One looks like a Coke thing. It's really cool. I haven't read it in 25 years probably, so I can't explain the plot. He did Brat Pack, which was a famous kind of more adult take on superheroes.
Oh, I was gonna say it was like if it was like a riff on the Molly Ringwald kind of crew from the 80s. That's the.
It was probably, I guess it was later than that, but yeah, it has a famous cover of like a Robin stand-in shaving his legs while holding on to, I think, if I remember right, he's holding like his mask in his teeth.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So he's someone I was aware of for a long time, but I haven't engaged. I mean, I think he's somebody that I would like to engage with more in the future, just because he's been around so long and seems to be continuously creative decade after decade.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. What do you think of Army? Is it Army at Love?
I think it's Army at Love because of like the conceit. The conceit of the book is that the U.S. is invading Afghanistan, and it's not going well. So to turn things around, to up the recruitment and to up troop morale, they introduce this like. They call it, they shorten it as MOMO. It's the division of morale and like mood and morale or something like that. And basically they like
motivation and morale.
Motivation and morale. Thank you. They like buoy the morale through like throwing basically orgies and just bacchanalia. So it's like an army, but they're doing sex and drugs and stuff to make it fun and make people want to enjoy.
Yeah, so it's this very 2007. So something I really liked about this book is it feels like, and I was trying to think of other examples of this, it feels like something like taking a classic 1950s romance comic, and then just what would the 2007 version of that be, and what would the Vertigo version of that be? So to kind of take this like it's about this kind of couples that are cheating on each other because the woman's away at war and she's involved in this like sex party stuff, and then meanwhile her husband is back in New Jersey, who's cheating on her with the wife of another soldier out there.
Right.
And so it felt very much like the rough structure of a romance comic, but kind of moved up to this kind of vertigo edginess.
And I think the cover is like definitely indicative of that. Like this kind of pose is like that. Although it's funny, I wonder if like in our difference of like sort of things we focus on, like to me, I don't feel that it is that, but I see what you're saying totally. Like I could see how it could be that for you, and maybe it is just generally. But because my mind is so locked into like geopolitics, to me it's like just military satire and like political satire. And I know Rick Veitch was like a hippie rebel type of guy. So like knowing that kind of also pairs with that, and it's like that's the focus for me.
Yeah, well I think that's that overlaid over a romance structure.
And there is like romance stuff going on, obviously. So I guess it could be both. But so for me it was like this like silly like almost Mad Magazine type of deal.
Yeah, there's a lot of like kind of joking about. There's a lot of, it feels very I don't know how to describe it. It feels very much like a take on a jokey version of how weird things could get in 2007. No.
No, I mean I don't think this was like pitched as like this is reality or like something that could
but just like because soldiers at war and how technology was, because a lot of it is about people communicating. Like it starts on Christmas Day, and the main the protagonist's husband is in New Jersey in the snow while she's like in the middle of the desert in the middle of the day when he's at night. And so there's this like amping up how weird technology is, and there's all this stuff like they don't even explain it, but in their house, whenever he opens up a drawer looking for his tie or anything, there's giant stacks of cash everywhere. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I just thought that was like, I don't know, like a weird thing. You thought that was a technology thing?
Oh, I thought it was just kind of a take on how weird things could get. Like maybe it's like cash is all that matters, so they don't have banking system anymore, so their house is full of stacks of cash. That's something I don't really get to in the first issue, but I thought it was kind of an indication of his commentary on modern stuff.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. So if this is, which I think it is, kind of a modernization of romance comics, I was trying to think of other things that kind of did that, and I think that happens sometimes with westerns and science fiction. Like I was thinking of the structure of like Chenkin's American Flag is a book where it's just like a sheriff comes to town, has to clean it up, and so it's almost like a western structure kind of with science fiction stuff laid over it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we see that a lot in sci-fi stuff. Like obviously Cowboy Bebop is like that, and Star Wars in many of its iterations are like that. It's just
Mandalorian's very
but even in the original trilogy, like set on what's the original desert planet? Tatooine. Yeah. And like their outlaw bars and saloons and the Wild West, because space to us is the wild, to us right now it's barely reachable, but like in the future it could be the Wild West. So it makes sense to like overlay those things together, right?
Yeah. So I don't know, but like I said, this felt different than any other. It felt like a different version of a modern iteration of something, but also didn't really like any of the characters. That was a weird thing, because I'm very character based in my enjoyment of stuff, and so I don't know if it made me interested to read more Rick Veitch, but not particularly interested to read more of this series.
Yeah, I think if I came across it again in like because this is the first time I've ever seen it, I was unaware of it before. If I came across it again in like $1 or like a quarter bin or whatever, I would probably still pick it up just to see, like, explore some of those things or see if some of those things get explored, like you're talking about the money
Sure.
and like that stuff, and just see where it goes. But I'm not like, oh my gosh, this is like my new favorite book by any means.
Yeah, I don't know. And this is a weird thing. I don't know how you'll feel about this one, but there's an ad in it that says Vertigo Comics is by far the HBO of the comic book world.
Which is hilarious that this is coming out in 2007 is actually, it was probably doing pretty good then. I'm trying to think like what else would have been like the edgy, accessible thing.
I think HBO at that point was very much that. But I thought it was a lame ad because it's like, we're like this other company that we're not. And it was just a weird way that comics kind of knocks itself down to be like, we're just like this thing. It's just like, maybe be the Vertigo.
What so yeah, that's Army at Love. And then the next we read was Strange Skies Over East Berlin, with, let's see, Jeff Loveness, excuse me.
Yeah.
Writing, illustrated by Lissandro Estherren. And this is issue 3. I know you and I had previously read at least issue 1.
Yeah, I really enjoyed issue 1, especially the art.
Right on. Yeah, and it is cool. The art's interesting. It's like
just really beautiful things with light. Yeah, I didn't really enjoy this issue. It's not, the art's still beautiful. I just, like, issue 1 starts with this really interesting thing of this, it's set in Berlin, and it's about a guy who's helping people get over the Berlin Wall. And it's like done really, really well at night with big spotlights coming on. The artist is doing this fantastic job of creating mood. And then the end of it, he ends up in a bunker, and like ghosts show up. And I kind of didn't care about the mystical part of it. I was fascinated by that. And this one just leans more into that. It feels very much just like a mid issue. Like there's a flashback in it where he talks about where he feels about really guilty for betraying I think he was like some kind of agent for the bad guys in it, and he feels guilty because he had a romance with a protester or something, and betrayed her, and she gets sent away. But it just felt like there was no nuance in the writing for me. It was just like, he was like, I feel guilty because this girl was totally pure, and I'm bad because I did my job and sent her off. And it just felt really like there wasn't anything there. It was kind of cliche.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Or it just felt like a mid issue. Like there was so much excitement in the first issue, which there frequently is in issue 1s. But yeah, I don't know. This was all that interesting.
Yeah, I'd certainly like to see more work from the artist.
I always look for this one when we are in the quarter bins, because I remembered how much the first one impacted you. You're like, oh, it's really cool.
Yeah, it was really fun. And something I've been trying to, I think we were talking in a recent video about kind of our feelings about publishers. And I think Boom is a company that I've been trying to like feel out how I feel about Boom, which is, maybe that's unfair because there's lots of things where it's the creators make the book independently, and that's who picks it up is less. There's a really weird ad in this one too. Is this like, I think this is a V-Wars thing that looks like a TV show they made of it or something, and the actor's holding the comic?
I think it was a TV show and a comic book. But yeah, I mean, I still, Boom has lost my faith and has yet to regain it. But you got this, so I was giving it a shot.
Yeah. It's like I almost don't want to. I don't want to believe that. I mean, they did publish Maria Levitt's Heartbeat, which you liked.
Yeah, that one's okay. I like her other stuff a lot better.
Okay. Yeah, so it's we're figuring it out. I'm still trying to figure out if it's unfair to me to do that with publishers, but
that's very nice of you. So this next one was Bats, Cats, and Cadillacs, which is just a fun name to say. From Now Comics.
Oh yeah, I do really enjoy Now Comics. Oh, I also want to point out, kind of as an aside, it has I don't know why I'm so focused on ads today.
Well, but because at least this one was apropos because we talked about Narc. Recently,
right.
I think.
So yeah, it has a Narc. No one had the guts until now.
Yeah, it's this ridiculous hyper-violence video game.
It's kind of like a Paul Verhoeven, like
Yes.
machine gun cocaine video game.
Yeah, totally. That's a great actually comparison, because we were just talking about Paul Verhoeven earlier today, because I just watched Starship Troopers for the first time. Actually, I decided to watch it after I read Army at Love, because I was like, oh, I've been meaning to watch this. Let's watch this. But anyways, Bats, Cats, and Cadillacs. What were your thoughts?
I only read the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was in a stack of books, and it was one of the things that I switched over. It starts off with a couple, this is issue 2, and it starts off with a couple on a date, and then a group of rowdy leprechauns come in and take over the bar.
Yeah.
And it was fun. I don't know. I didn't read much past that. What were your thoughts?
I thought the art was really nice. Like, it felt like, art kind of felt like it was from like an eerie magazine, like an old horror comic type style. With the coloring too, kind of felt like that, which I like. I like those things. The story itself kind of was like boring to me, and like not very, like the pacing wasn't great, and it was a little bit confusing, because some of the, like 3 of the main characters are sort of mystical, and then it seems like one of them, who's this guy in a green suit with blonde hair, is like a normie who like hangs out with them. And maybe that's all explained in issue 1, and I just missed that or something. But yeah, I don't know. It, like, maybe if I was a kid, I would be into it, because it is kind of, it's pretty basic. Like the story, it's pretty straightforward. I guess that's a better way to say it. It's pretty straightforward. Just like, yep, there's some leprechauns took over a bar. Let's go kick them out of the bar. End of story.
Yeah, I was looking at the Super Cops ad in it.
That I gave more pause to that ad than the whole rest of the book. I was like, that looks really cool. Exactly, right? It has all these really cool like 80s faces.
Yeah. So and now comics is a publisher that I kind of on the same theme of enjoying publishers, because the thing I always go back to them is they did Terminator comics set in the far future before Terminator 2 came out. So it's this different direction than the actual movies went.
And you love the Terminator.
Yeah, and so it's really cool to see, like, they have good Terminators that live on the moon in it, and
cool.
It's really weird. And you know, they did like Married with Children, the comic. It's all this stuff that was very, very much of the late 80s. Yeah, I kind of felt like, you know, I didn't read the whole thing, but I kind of felt like this is a book that the cover, this weird cover, kind of is what it is, and reading the interior, like, yeah, that's kind of what I expected.
Yeah, yeah, I guess, yeah, pretty much.
It's a comics code book, which is interesting.
Wow, yeah.
I didn't know Now was going through that.
Towards the tail end, I suppose, right?
If I remember right, the comics code lasted into the 90s.
Oh, okay.
But I think a lot of places just stopped using it after a while.
Yeah, and starting with like around the Dark Knight, I want to say, is when people started being like, whatever.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing. Yeah, the comics code kind of existing, and then having things like, I assume, Watchmen and the Dark Knight that are held up as much.
Might have been Watchmen that actually was the one that like gave the middle finger to the comics code.
That would make sense. Yeah.
At some point, there was some book that was so big that was just like, we don't care anymore. We're doing it this way, and
yeah,
screw you, comics code.
Yeah, it was really funny, the comics code existing 30 years after it meant to kind of, you know, sanitize things for EC Comics, still following these like rules that were so biased against that publisher.
Well, this is one that you read. It's a series that I haven't been able to really connect with. It's not my thing, but you're a much better ambassador for it, because you've read quite a bit and like it.
Oh yeah. So Dalgoda is a science fiction story about a dog-looking alien that comes to Earth from the planet. It almost sounds like Canada. It's like Canada or something.
Oh, probably because like
Canada.
Canines are
dog
people.
Yeah, I think they make some Canada jokes in it. But this team of Jan Strand and Dennis Fujitake did an adaptation of Keith Laumer's Retief that I'm a big fan of. It's very much like, Fujitake is like a very, very big Mobius fan, obviously, and his version of Retief was Mobius. It was very Mobius inspired. this is like, I really like the first issue of Dalgoda, and I really like this issue, but it's a series that kind of meanders in a way that I'd like to read it all in order because I'm spinning it all. But this is the Christmas issue, issue 4, and I actually really like this one. It's very much set like a one-off, and it has these characters, the Dalgoda character and another guy who I don't know too much about his character are teleported by some device onto a planet with a tropical island, and it's this beautiful paradise, and the human character is really concerned the whole time. He's like, why do I know this island? I know something, like he recognized the necklaces the natives are wearing, and he's really unsure. And that's cut between the human that discovered Dalgoda, that first saved him from his ship in the first issue, being incredibly depressed because he's been kicked out of his job and he's living on Hawaii. Another interesting thing about this is Dennis Fujitake might be the only cartoonist that I'm aware of that was working out of Hawaii while he did comics. I know some Hawaiian cartoonists that moved to the mainland and then worked, but I think this was being drawn in Hawaii, if I remember right. And so the B plot is this human character who's convinced that his friend Dalgoda is dead, and is in this rainy Christmas day in Hawaii with there's a Santa Claus outside of his window ringing a bell, and he's drunk and he's committing suicide, and it's this really dark.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, it's this really dark scene where he's just, it kind of contrasted, which I really like, between this beautiful but kind of creepy island that they're trying to figure out. And in the end, they figure out that the island is an island that was destroyed in basically a science fiction atomic experiment, and the guy had read an article about it. And then the island disappears right as one of the islander convinces, they kind of, a lady takes off all her clothes and convinces the dock alien to go into the water with her. And then the island disappears, and they realize that she saved them. And then they're picked up again, and even though it'd been like a day or two for them, it was 5 months to everyone else. And then he calls his friend as his friend's contemplating suicide, and has kind of a happy ending. So it's a really kind of dark Christmas story that has this kind of magical thing, and I don't know, I really liked it.
Cool.
And there's a lot of Fujitake's art where he's drawing this character in this bar in the rain that I really enjoyed. Like he does these little Mobius dots, and I like how he draws coats. So yeah, it was a good comic, and kind of a good. I've been thinking a lot about doing more self-contained issues of comics, and I thought this pulled that off really well.
Good. Cool. Well, another one that you read is Incredible Hulk versus the Thing, right?
Oh yeah. So this is, I think it's from 1978, so I was 2 years old when this came out. And I specifically got it because it's a Roy Thomas comic, and I know Roy Thomas's work a lot from Conan. He was the guy that was kind of set to take over Marvel Comics from Stan Lee, and never did, but he was kind of being set up in that position. And, so it's Roy Thomas writing and Herb Trimp on art. And I'm not a big Herb Trimp fan. He's very much just like a 70s standard Marvel guy, but it feels very 70s in a way that I don't particularly like. But I like this issue a lot. It had a thing in it that I really enjoyed, where basically they figured out a cure for the Incredible Hulk to no longer be the Hulk at the Baxter Building, Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four. And so they've set up something to lure him there, and they've got all of their security guards trained to expect Bruce Banner the Hulk. And one of the security guards his wife has just had a baby, and he's really like not in a good place and can't really be at work. And so he goes away, and another security guard friend of him takes over his job and isn't as trained as that guy is. And that's basically, I saw it as the writer being like expecting Reed Richards to be so prepared that the only thing that could mess it up and get the Hulk inside the building is if something that unexpected, like a guy's wife having a baby. It was an interesting kind of humanizing scene of just really like unnecessary side characters, or kind of like, I don't know, NPCs almost, for lack of a better word.
Interesting.
So yeah, it was fun.
Cool.
I don't like how Herb Trimp draws the Hulk nose.
It's a bit weird, huh? It's kind of big, bulbous. And then this week you read Kamui, right?
Yeah. I actually wanted to contrast talking about Kamui with The Master of Kung Fu because
Nice.
I read these back to back,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess it's interesting too because this is a Japanese comic about you know fighting and martial arts and things, and this is an American comic about fighting and martial arts, and I think they're probably both done
Around the same time?
around the same time. So something that especially stuck about these two things to me is in The Master of Kung Fu. He's got like a sidekick guy who's a white guy named Black Jack Tar, and he refers to Shang-Chi as Chinaman almost on every page. And so I read this, and then I read Kamui, and Kamui, there's a letter in the back that talks about a guy that got a hold of the original Japanese edition of this and realized how much of the sexual violence they took out of this book to publish it in America. And that was something I was thinking about, kind of the current climate in comics, and how no one in a Marvel comic is saying Chinaman, but
Thankfully.
publishing, there's some very successful manga like Berserk that has like really intense rape scenes left in. So it's interesting to kind of this cultural shift where I guess sexual violence is more acceptable and kind of I guess racial insensitivity is less acceptable.
Interesting.
It's just a shift. I don't have a strong feelings on it.
I mean, I feel like it's because one's well, they both can be interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's a shift, I guess.
Yeah, because I mean, I think you can make like Berserk is a really good argument for that working in the story. It's a really necessary part of these characters dealing with all this horrible trauma. I mean, I don't think the Master of I don't think it's particularly necessary in the Master of Kung Fu.
No, probably not.
Yeah. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Kamui's it was interesting in that it feels very Lone Wolf and Cub. I did not look up if it was the same creator, but I don't think it is. But this is clearly like a serialized manga that they've broken up to put in the American thing. Also, the letters column is called Death Threats, which I remember right is what Drew Hayes and Poison Elves would call his opening thing. But it was an interesting thing. Like early manga translations in America are really interesting because it's also like really nice to see them this big as opposed to little Takabon books.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I mean, it's with the manga pacing, it's basically just like a lot of 3-panel pages of sword fights. So it's a weird thing to read as a monthly.
Yeah.
Maybe it was bi-weekly, I don't remember.
It was bi-weekly.
Okay.
It says on the cover. And it's weirdly published by both Eclipse and Viz Media, which is now Viz just has their own.
Oh, yeah. I think, well, I know this is half a guess. It does say bi-weekly on the cover, you're right. I suspect that Viz was working as a translation company and not a publisher there, because I remember Studio Proteus was another big translator. And operated similarly. Like they switched, like, I'm thinking a lot about the manga from Eclipse, is a lot of it switched over to Dark Horse when Eclipse went away.
Totally. And they continue to be the main American-based publisher, I think. I mean, like, obviously Viz and Tokyo Pop and others do it, but they're Japan-based, I think. Am I right? They obviously have American branches, but...
no, I think those are all American.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's like Tokyo Pop not being out of Tokyo is a weird...
Yeah, that's...
They're out of LA. Yeah.
The more you know. So then next up, a comic that I really enjoyed was Babe by John Byrne, written and drawn by John Byrne. And yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was really fun, really beautiful. It's very different than anything else I've ever read. And yeah, I don't know, it's really cute. Like, and John Byrne is very obviously into big, strong ladies. Not only from this, but also from, like, She-Hulk and just other stuff he's written. Because this Babe character, she just kind of shows up, not wearing anything. She shows up, like, the Venus, and can't talk at first. And she just starts saying babe because this guy who's a agent in Hollywood, finds her first and says like, "Hey babe, like where are you going?" or something like that. And so then she decides that her name is Babe, and that's like almost all she can say until later. Apparently she can talk. That's a bit weird, but she's really really strong, and this agent guy is like, "I'm gonna make her a big star. This is my big break," because he's kind of like this, like a little sleazy manager who's like definitely not had a good hit in a while. And then I'm glad you were flipping through it, because I just remember the end is like some aliens realize that either the Babe isn't there and like should have been on their ship or something. They figure out something relating to Babe. So it seems like she's like an extraterrestrial, maybe.
They're worried about fusion destabilization, whatever that means.
But then they have a picture of her.
Yeah.
For some reason.
And they're like, we must secure possession of this female before the fusion destabilizes. So it's vague, but they want her.
Yeah, they want her. And the aliens look very Invaders from Mars style, which is cool. Yeah, I don't know. I like John Byrne. I like that book. I would definitely hunt this down. I would get it even if it wasn't in a quarter bin, frankly, because I liked it so much. What did you think?
Well, just a side note, I noticed that the cover is painted by Gary Cody, which is, I remember thinking like John Byrne is such a specialist who's really like just an ink on paper writing and drawing comic guy. I was kind of surprised when I saw this cover. I was like, oh, did he paint too? But apparently he didn't.
I see. Well.
I think I liked it much less than you did. I feel like I talked about this in another video, but it felt like him taking a lot of the tropes from She-Hulk and kind of doing his own version of it. Yeah, it's I like John Byrne a lot, but there's some things in this that, like, I guess they were just fun and him being goofy, but there's a bunch of stuff that messed with my understanding of, like, the logic felt a little off to me. Like, there's this, like, at one point he brings her into a police station because he just finds a naked woman by the side of the road, and the police are just like, we don't know what to do with her. So she's basically, another agent shows up and picks her up from the police station, and then he has to rescue her from the other agent, and then they end up just on Letterman. I guess they're agents and everything, but it felt like these big jumps in logic that confused me a little bit. And there's lots of her like trying on outfits. I don't know. I'm not explaining it very well. I thought it was a lesser John Byrne comic, but also fun. There's a point, like, I really like John Byrne, and then there's an issue of Spider-Man that he did. He did a relaunch of Spider-Man at one point, and I don't know if I still feel this way, but at the time I remember thinking that was like a line in the sand of me liking his work less after the Spider-Man. I think Next Men was right before that, which I really enjoyed. Next Men, and it's a weird critique of this because I'm saying this is like him doing She-Hulk, because Next Men was him doing his version of the X-Men, and I preferred it to his work on X-Men. So yeah, I don't know, and the main character just seems like the guy who calls her Babe. Like, he just seems like such a he's not really like a person. He's like this kind of parody of a Hollywood agent. It's like a little guy chomping cigars, and he's just like, come with me, babe. This is gonna get my career back on track. So I don't know. I will read more if we get more.
Yeah, that was, I think, maybe my favorite thing that we read.
Oh, cool.
So then going into my not so favorite thing, The Sword of Solomon Kane. Oh my goodness. Wow. What a stupid character. I'm sorry. Not really, though. I'm not really sorry. I really don't like it. Let's have a Puritan be the person that we relate with.
Yeah, that's the funny thing about Solomon Kane is, so I should say, like this is Ralph Macchio and Brett Blevins with Al Williamson on inks. Like, these people have all made excellent comics, and I think this is a Sienkiewicz cover if I'm reading his signature right.
It does look like it.
So it's a bunch of incredibly talented people, and I feel like this is one of the rare instances where I'm just like, the character sucks so bad that he just poisons the entire well. And the only reason that anyone cares about Solomon Kane is that it was made by Robert E. Howard, who created Conan. So it just feels like a lame first draft of a better character later on, and he feels like the villain, but not like in an anti-hero way. He just sucks.
Yeah, he just sucks.
And so he just shows up, and it's just like, you guys aren't moral enough.
Yeah.
And then there's a secondary character that's like a young man whose fiance keeps getting kidnapped from him, and he sucks too.
Yeah, they'll just suck.
So we're just following these two intensely unlikable, judgmental characters, and I mean the villains suck too. I like the Brett Blevins art. He has a funny way of drawing women, like super pointed toes and arched back that I think is cute, and it's a little, it feels like a little less appropriate in a comic where, like, it's great when he's doing, you know, when he does Brett Blevins drew Braz Chronicles, which is my favorite work by him, and it's about a prostitute in turn of the century England who finds an alien, and they basically become detectives together, and her being like hypersexual makes sense because she's like trained in it for her job and everything, and she uses it to help her in solving crimes and everything. But this one is just basically this woman has no agency, and they just to save her from getting just tossed around between all these dudes, and she's just like in a raggedy dress with her toes pointed and her back arched, and it doesn't make me think it's very well thought through. Yeah, even the logo's good. It's just Solomon Kane is, you know.
This is a stupid character.
Yeah.
Robert E. Howard did good in the Hyborian age. He did not do good in other things.
This reminds me, I don't know if I've ever given my spiel about how I think Daredevil would be a better villain than a hero.
Interesting.
Yeah, because, well, if you take like the Ninja Turtles, like kind of, you know how Ninja Turtles is kind of loosely, it was initially a parody of Daredevil.
Yeah.
And then you think about like, if the Foot Clan, or sorry, the Hand is what they're called in Foot Clan's the Ninja Turtle parody version of Hand in Daredevil.
I always mix those up too.
And if you had the Hand as more of like a fun Ninja Turtle ninjas, and they want to go to Hell's Kitchen to get the best pizza, but there's a blind lawyer who dresses like a devil there. Like, it sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously I like a lot of Daredevil comics.
Me too.
And Mad Mark. That's interesting. Kind of an aside, is there an era you think of as Daredevil? Because I know Daredevil comics probably still come out, but
Mark Waid.
Interesting. Yeah, because for me it's the Frank Miller stuff.
That makes sense. I know you love that, like, Frank Miller 80s.
Yeah, and I think there's probably some. So the Mark Waid Daredevil, who was that drawn by? I remember that being beautiful.
Oh, he's so good. Chris something, I want to say.
Chris Samney?
Yes,
okay.
It was nice. Yeah, he's so good.
Because I remember those, and they would have these 2-page spreads where it just show the sounds that Matt Murdock would hear and everything.
So cool.
Yeah, it's such a totally different thing. It's weird, the idea of like, of these characters that, like, you know, 50 years after we're dead, there'll probably be Daredevil comics coming out. But right now, they're publishing Daredevil comics, and I mean, something that we get into sometimes, which is interesting, is you'll talk about like your version of X-Men, and because my X-Men stuff kind of ends at the Chris Claremont era, when you talk about early 2000s, later 90s X-Men, my brain almost translated it as like, oh, that's fan fiction they were making, but it's not the real stuff, which I know is nonsense, but it's interesting how we kind of, like, those characters are almost not meant to continue, like, for a reader to continue as long as the characters do. Like, the Daredevil coming out now is not really, probably not meant for if somebody who was reading it in the 80s like I was.
I suppose if you take a static view, then yeah, sure. But if you take the thing that, like, got me back into superhero comics as an adult was that superhero comics are a reflection of like the world, and of the current world too. It's very, very current. And so if you want to, like, see what a character that you connect with is like in the current age, then I think it still holds a lot of value to check in with that character. But it has to be that you didn't connect with just a version of the character. It's that you connected with that character, which to me is very different, because I think that, like, characters have certain sort of, like, how do I say, like like central tenets, right? Like some certain things that make like a character still be that character. Like if you take Superman and you make him no longer like about like truth and justice and like just the total big blue Boy Scout, then if you take those things away, then he's not Superman anymore. You're writing about a different character at that point.
Sure.
And I think all good characters have those cores. If it doesn't have a core, I don't think it's.
I think that happens a lot though, where characters will be changed pretty dramatically, and then they becomes like new versions of them. Like, when Liefeld took over Cannonball, he changed him like completely as a character. I thought, at least visually, and I thought that he was kind of wrecked the character. Like, I don't think Cannonball's been as good post Liefeld as he was pre Liefeld.
I mean, okay. For me, I think he did I don't really like a lot of the things that Liefeld did, but I actually think that getting to see the New Mutants grow up is really cool for me because I love the New Mutants.
I like that in concept, but it's not in practice.
I like it in practice and in concept. I think it's really interesting to see what Sam Guthrie ends up doing, and how he evolves from a hayseed kid to someone who goes out and not only sees the world but sees the galaxy, the universe, and all this stuff, and how that impacts him and changes him. But I still think that despite all that, like, his core still is there. Like, he definitely has new experiences and stuff, but he's still a country boy at heart, and that comes through in different storylines, even in the last couple years. I can't remember what some of Hickman's stuff I was reading had Cannonball in it, and I thought they did a really good job of like hitting back on the notes that made him him.
Huh, that's cool. I mean, I'm not opposed to them doing things like that, but it does make me think that there's a lot of characters like I know if I went out and bought a new Spider-Man comic, I don't think I'd like it. But when Spider-Man's one of my favorite Marvel characters, but I think that he exists really well from like his Ditko Stan Lee creation until the 80s, and then I lose interest because I think that they kind of lost what was fun about it for me.
I mean, and it is possible for, like I was saying, like they can, if someone disregards the core and changes the character to the point where that core is gone, then it's no longer the same character. So that would make sense. So if I never really liked Spider-Man, but if you were if you're someone who does, then it's possible that you did like Spider-Man as he was originally created. But that doesn't mean that you have to always like Spider-Man if they've been negligent and not kept up the core.
Yeah, and there's also things that change the character too. Like you have like Spider-Man as a college student, or him as kind of a struggling person, gets weaker and weaker if he's been much more established as a character, and like he's dating a famous model or whatever, something like that. It's like it changes the character dynamic. It's interesting. I had an idea before where I was thinking that like Fantastic Four, I think, is a really difficult comic to do right. Mm-hmm. And I thought that like after Kirby and Lee that John Byrne was kind of the only one that could handle it really well. And I read some Hickman stuff that I like. And I don't really like Hickman comics generally. Like his X-Men stuff did not connect with me. Mm. But I thought that he really was able to get what was cool about the Fantastic Four. So that was a cool thing where I was kind of proven wrong by them kind of getting the core of the character.
Yeah. The Fantastic Four is a very interesting group of characters to follow over time. Though, like whether or not people get it right or wrong, I think it's really interesting because that's the family of comic books. Like that is the main like family grouping.
The first family of superheroes.
Literally the first family, yes. And so like to track their progress over time.
Captain Marvel.
They weren't that's not a full-fledged nuclear family.
They're not quite the same, but yeah.
And so tracking the Fantastic Four over time, you can draw interesting parallels between like the state of the nuclear family, or lack thereof. And I think there might be something to the fact that Fantastic Four is almost undoable now, it seems, and the nuclear family in America is much less prevalent as well.
I've heard an argument, I don't know if I necessarily agree entirely with this, but I've heard an argument that Marvel kind of lost their way. There's a thing they were doing with Fantastic Four where they showed the progression of them, and then when they had Franklin Richards, and then he started to grow up with that when Marvel decided, or whoever Marvel decided to basically halt Franklin Richards from aging, then it would kind of they really lost being relevant in a certain way. And it is disappointing. I know there's lots of 80s versions of like the future Franklin Richards and everything, but it would have been really cool if they did a 11 Rockets or Gasoline Alley thing where you just saw the characters grow up, and Franklin Richards eventually took the mantle from his father and everything.
Do you know what happens to Franklin in canon? Like, he's appeared in the movies.
Oh, he has?
Yeah. He's at least in canon, I guess canon can change, but from what I remember was that he becomes King the Conqueror. So King the Conqueror, who shows up at the end of the Doctor Strange movie, that is Franklin Richards.
Oh, I mean, you can be anything you want. You can grow up and be a black man.
Or Franklin Richards was black always in the MCU. I don't know. Because King is not, or at least originally wasn't black in the comics.
Right, he's blue. He's blue-faced. He's part of the Blue Man Group.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder, I mean, it's a lot to process.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, while you process that, let's talk about Blood and Shadows by Joe R. Lansdale and Mark Nelson.
Oh, this is a very fun comic.
Yeah, very fun. This is issue 2, although based on what I looked up online, I'm not certain that they're... I don't know if it's like a sequential thing or if it's almost like an anthology. Maybe you know?
No, when we saw these, I think they were like quarter bin comics, and they had issue 2 and 3 there.
Isn't this issue 2?
Yeah, so they had issue 2 and 3, but they didn't have 1. So I decided just to grab one of it and try it out. And as far as I can tell from reading it, this is a character who's a modern day detective finding a diary about a soldier. Is he?
He's a Union soldier in the American West. So it must be, and he's black. So I believe it's implied that it's like late 1800s, maybe like 1870s, 1880s, which was when there were a lot of clashes between the Union Army and...
1876.
Oh, there we go. Wow. And the Native American population out west. And that's what happens in this.
Yeah, it's very Lovecraftian.
Yes, very Lovecraftian. Really beautiful art, great coloring. It says DC Comics Vertigo, so I think that's probably when they were sort of, like, Vertigo was just sort of starting to become its own thing, or maybe not, I'm not sure. But I remember they did that a lot earlier on, like...
This is 96, so it might be like...
Oh, never mind.
That feels like peak Vertigo.
Yeah, totally.
It doesn't... Yeah, I don't know if the main story was... I was surprised to see Vertigo on the cover, because there's a lot of elements about it, like even... I have to get over some of my inherent dislike of Vertigo's production stuff to enjoy some of their work. Like, even when we were reading the Love at War comic, like the coloring was so Vertigo that I had to just be like, okay. And this doesn't have Vertigo coloring. It's like kind of nice. It almost has like a P. Craig Russell style, like watercolor flatness to it.
Totally.
It's Ray Murtaugh on colors.
And it basically deals with like a skinwalker, kind of like person who picks up an artifact that, long story, but like basically fell down to Earth in a meteor and turns the person who holds it into like this like raging monster, and the person who picks it up in the story is already pretty much a raging monster, so this just like amplifies that, and he's like a horrible person, and yeah.
And he turns into a horrible monster, and there's things I didn't expect in it. Like he's a cannibal, and he keeps cutting people up.
Yeah.
And there's this great scene at the end where the main character is trying to sneak up on him, and he's just left limbs everywhere. and he set up the limbs as like a trap that start grabbing the guy.
Yeah.
And it's such a horrific scene. Like,
So creepy.
like I think horror comics are one of the hardest things to pull off. Like,
Totally.
like I always feel like horror and comedy are always anything where you have to elicit a specific reaction, like an emotion is expected. And I just thought, reading this, I was like, oh, this will be a fun, weird Western. And I just noticed on the cover, there's just like human ears on a necklace. That's a big thing here, which I think the main guy wears around his neck, the villain.
He does. He says he keeps them as his trophies of basically women that have spurned him.
And that was before he was a monster.
Yeah, that's before he gets turned into a like horrifying Lovecraftian monster.
Yeah, so I think this is my favorite thing that we read, or at least one of my, because I wasn't expecting this, because I think we're talking about the Urasawa book next, but which I also enjoyed, but this I did not expect to enjoy it so much, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, super good. I liked it a lot for sure, and I would get this again for sure if I found it in a quarter bid. Yeah, Blood and Shadows. What a cool find. Never heard of it. Happy we found it. And now to talk about the one that you were really excited about, and I am also, but Mujirushi, right? I think is what it's called. Mujirushi, by Naoki Urasawa, who you love.
Yeah, so Urasawa, famous for, actually just ordered from our local manga store, Manga Hole, I just ordered the first book of Pluto, in case he hasn't read it yet, and it's exceptional. So yeah, Urasawa, known for, he does a Monben videos where he interviews other cartoonists, which is worth looking up if you haven't seen it, and he did 20th Century Boys is probably his big book, and Pluto. Billy Bat, he's like one of my favorite manga artists working in Japan these days. I feel like his work kind of revitalized my faith in modern manga, because there's a point where, much like I was saying about John Byrne, I knew there's a problem with me, is I had drawn a line in the sand of like, I don't really like how a lot of modern manga feels when I read it. It felt like they were wasting pages, and it was very slow paced. And then Urasawa stuff, and before I discovered his work, I was very anti-plot as a concept, which is weird to me now, because I like it, and I felt like and I was anti the manga style of using assistants, and I felt like reading his work really changed my idea on the value of kind of a studio system in manga and the value of how he does plot. So this one specifically is done for the Louvre.
Yeah.
It's called the Louvre editions. It's this interesting thing. It's kind of hard to find all of the Louvre books because they seem to be pulling from Europe and Japan.
Yeah.
No Americans have done a Louvre book that I'm aware of. And most of the Louvre books I've found, they're good, but they feel like a job sometimes. Like
not this one though.
Yeah, we talked about The Walking Man a lot.
Yeah.
That guy did a Louvre book, and I didn't like it as much as his own work. And although the JoJo guy did a Louvre book, but I thought was.
You can see it right over there. It is Rodin at the Louvre. Or Rohan? Maybe Rohan.
Yeah,
Rohan at the Louvre.
Yeah, and that one I enjoyed.
Yeah, that one is good. It's so pretty. Everybody in that book is gorgeous.
I like that aspect of here. Just like, man, the Louvre was just like make a bangable cast.
Yeah, and then like a super creepy plot. But this no one in this is bangable. But they're very well drawn. The art is exceptional. The plot is really, really good. And I'm so glad that I read it with you, because I don't think I would have quite understood the reference that's being made throughout the book had I not talked to you about it.
Yeah, I should have researched more before we talked to you. So there's this character who shows up. So, the Louvre, big museum in France, and they ask Urasawa to do a story about the Louvre. And so one of the main catalyst characters for it is this manga character who's basically like a Francophile. And if I remember right, he's from the 60s, like mid 60s children's comic, had this ridiculous character that was a Francophile, and he kind of looks like a racist character of a Japanese person, which is weird to see in a manga. Yeah,
especially since the character is created by Japanese people for Japanese people.
Yeah, and in the 60s he had like bright yellow skin.
Wow. Yeah. Japan. It's a weird place.
Yeah, so I was explaining to Casey, I was like, it's the equivalent if you asked an American artist, like, do a story about France, and they're like, okay, well, Pepe Le Pew's the main character then.
Yeah.
And so that's really funny. And I wonder how much traction that gets in France as far as people understanding what it is, because you know, I dig into a lot of old manga stuff, and it was new to me.
It's possible that in part, like that character's love of France is so genuine and like who he is that maybe they end up being like, oh, it's cool. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I like the character. I think it's
me too.
Ridiculous and fun character.
Yeah.
There's also a Donald Trump stand-in, which you'd think would make a comic suck, but it's just it's this woman who looks exactly like Donald Trump that is...
Her name's like Beverly Benton or something like this. But yeah, she's Trump.
Yeah, and if you told me that it had a Trump stand-in it, I would lose interest entirely.
I almost don't even want to relay the entirety of the plot, because if someone had told me exactly what the plot was, I probably would have been like, oh, no, I don't care.
Yeah, well, Urasawa has a really good way of setting up mysteries and then bringing them together in a really cool, satisfying way. And sometimes when you reread his books, you're like, this is a weird way to set that up. Like, there's things in it, like there's a symbol of like these 3 squares that is kind of leading the characters.
That is the, what's it called? The, not katakana, the kanji for eyeball.
Oh,
I'm
interesting.
Sure, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So, I don't know, Urasawa just continues to impress me. And it's funny, I went into this also like The Blood and Shadows. I went into this with slightly lower expectations because it was a Louvre book. And when I posted on Instagram that I got this, someone messaged me and was like, I didn't enjoy that one that much. And so I was like, maybe it's not Urasawa's best work, but I'm excited to read it anyway. And he just keeps knocking it out of the park.
Yeah. And just so like you'll have a loose understanding of what happens in it. And it's like there's a family, mom, dad, daughter, and dad owns a factory. Factory goes kind of hard times. He and like they're looking at like bad things are going to happen because he's in a lot of debt now, and this weird Francophile character who works at the France Research Institute, FRI, which is apparently, it's not really a thing, I don't think, in Japan, but in the book it is. He works there, and he like ropes the dad and the daughter into this like plot to go to the Louvre, and then like hijinks ensue, and it gets like really, you know, serious and like emotional, but it ultimately like, I don't know, it's just, like you said, knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, and when they go to France, they meet up with a firefighter character, which I really liked, because he's this very kind of dashing movie star type guy, but he seems so French. He has the most French eyebrows. He's kind of like big arching French eyebrows in the way he's done, and he's incredibly, like, as much as the father character is such a mess up, this character is such a like strong moral character, which I really liked. It's really cool, and just how French the French people look is really enjoyable.
So yeah, anyways, Mujirushi is really, really good. We'll probably continue to look for, I'll definitely be reading more Urasawa, and we'll probably look for more of the Louvre books. So yeah, we liked it a lot, and I'll definitely be reading more Urasawa, and we'll probably be looking for more of the Louvre books, because it's an interesting little project to dip our toes into, this different artist take on this incredibly famous place. Yeah,
we were talking at one point on what American artists, because we'd seen no American artists in Louvre comics, and my immediate thing is I feel like Craig Thompson would be
cool.
The immediate go-to.
Man, if Frank, I know he's not American, he's British, but Frank Quitely would be so cool.
Would you have him write it himself, or would you team up with Morrison?
I've never seen him write. Oh my goodness, that would be cool. Him and Grant Morrison doing it together.
Like it?
That would be amazing. Yeah, that's what I want. Louvre, please give us this.
That is a good.
Probably not going to happen though. The French and the English don't get along, or French and the British. But
comics are universal. I don't know.
Rencontré.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about him.
But so that almost brings us to the end of what we've read. We have a lot of other books that we're sort of in the midst of reading, but in addition to those, we went to our friendly local game store, one of the many actually. We have a bunch here.
Maybe too many.
Went to Little Shop of Magic, which is an awesome place, and got these little RPG booklet things, and I've been really enjoying reading them, and we're gonna this Badger and Coyote one is very short, so we're gonna be doing something with that soon, and then the Goblin Errands one is like super cute and fun too, so maybe I can get you to play both of them.
Oh yeah,
we'll see.
I can really fascinated with the idea of games that just come as booklets.
Yeah.
Like I think you have to use dice with them, but
yeah.
But aside from that, it's just these. Yeah. So.
Very simple, and just as a little aside, I love badgers so much. I love badgers, and in real life, badgers and coyotes do occasionally hunt together. It's one of the few instances
they murder children. You say.
They murder children. No, they really hunt together. They'll look for prairie dogs and stuff, and so anyways, I think that's super cute, and then I just love gobos very much. I love gobos. I love goblins.
Well, something I'm interested in these because you've looked at them more than me.
Mm-hmm.
Is it are they set series of stories that you play through, or is it a replayable game that's different every time?
Oh, good question. No, they're very open-ended. So no, they're not a set series of things. Each booklet has starter ideas for here's a setting for an adventure.
Okay.
Ready, go. And each game has more or less robust sort of character building.
Mm-hmm.
And they just have very different systems, which is cool. I like RPG tabletop gaming things, so it's cool to see different systems get explored. I'm super familiar with the D&D system, but these both do it very differently. This one's a little bit similar to that.
Okay, is it similar to the D&D thing where a dungeon master or whatever would have to kind of do a story for people to follow?
So in Badger and Coyote, it's the subtitle is a cozy duet game of mischief and survival, and it is truly a duet game. It's only intended for 2 people. So this one does not require a game master or dungeon master or whatever. Goblin Errands, however, is intended for 5 people, I think is kind of the ideal.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, this one does require a game master. But in this game, in the Goblin Errands, the game master is called the tall person because they're the authority figure. All the gobos are these little short rambunctious people.
Mm-hmm.
So the game master in this is supposed to be referred to as the TP because that sounds like toilet paper, and no one should take themselves too seriously when they're playing Goblin Errands. That's a verbatim quote from this booklet. So that's the sort of tone of this, which is really cute, and it has
cool.
What's that?
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool, and it has the different a bunch of different classes that kind of mirror the barbarian, fighter, rogue, ranger, the other types of classes from D&D. So, anyways, those are fun. They seem like they're going to be cool. If any of y'all actually have recommendations on other just sort of mini little RPGs like this, I'd love to hear them. It's an area of the world that I'm just beginning to dip my toes into, the smaller RPG type stuff. So yeah, I think let me just double check. That looks like that's all we got for now.
Thank you for meeting with me with this informal talk.
Oh yes, of course. And thank you all for watching. If you got anything out of this video, please click that like button and subscribe. And until next time.